Module 3, finding your joy in flow through the compass in your heart. I know Pam, who's been a participant, really has an interest in flow, but looking in terms of how we find our flow through the compass in our heart. And tonight you can say we're focusing more on like the body health. And I know Qatar has an interest in that there. So let's look at this overall in context, beginning with this slide. So well-being. As a chiropractor and as a heart math practitioner, there's certain parameters or conditions we recognize of giving us a sense of well-being. As a chiropractor, recognize as best as possible the alignment of the spine, the proper muscle tone around the spine so the nerves can get out equally. And then the heart, with heart math, we recognize the heart needs to be beating in a proper rhythm or a coherent rhythm. And all that relates to extending a field. And this used to be thought as kind of a new age type thing, but now we can measure the field that extends from our body. And part of that field is influenced by our heart influence, our heart's electromagnetic field. And when that field that you can say is expanding out from ourselves, it gives us a sense of well-being, a sense of health, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Now, when things come along, like trauma, toxins, and thinking and feeling. Probably this is the number one, how we think and feel about things. And if any one of those, usually it's a combination of all three living in today's world, it causes a disease state. This is where you can say our field collapses, nerves can get irritated, contract muscles. That can make one leg shorter in terms of throw off the body symmetry. Our heart rhythms maybe are thrown off too into low coherence rather from high coherence. And when that field shrinks, you can say you might have a feeling that your world is collapsing in on you, like everything may bother you. I had a friend of mine, someone said good morning to him one morning, and they said back, what do you mean by that? Just by saying good morning. So, maybe you've had the experience too, where everything seemed to irritate you. Okay, but then we want to see, what does it take when we're in that state to guide back to a state of well-being? And that takes centrally lifestyle choices. It also takes taking care of your body care, natural supports. You may need, I talk about supplementation, but centrally it's lifestyle choices. And in order to follow through with lifestyle choices, we know we need to have a reason, acknowledging our reason for being leverage, our why, our sense of purpose. So when the thing comes up about having that second piece of cake, we stop, or we stop when we're looking to overdo something. So to have that leverage. So having an overall sense here, well-being, what it takes for that, and the interferences of it. So let's look at this. So finding joy, again, if we're feeling well, we know it's easier to have a sense of joy when we are feeling well. So seeing what it takes to have that well-being, which facilitates joy. Okay, lifestyle choices. Let's look at this overall. So we have lifestyle choices, us in the center, our posture. Again, as a chiropractor, I recognize how important our posture is. That's why when I do the heart-focused breathing, I have us upright ourselves. And when we upright ourselves, I'm sure you may have seen the TED Talks, where there's a person who gave a talk about just uprighting yourself gives you a sense of greater confidence. Breathing, eating and drinking, fitness, our rest activity balance. And let's look at more each of these. So posture, you can say our posture relates to our attitude and thinking. You can say when you look at someone kind of hunched over, you kind of have a sensing of what they're thinking and feeling. And even ourselves, when we feel hunched over, to observe what we're actually thinking and feeling. Breathing, we recognize has a lot to do with how we address stress, with how we are in you can say a calmer state, a poised state. Eating and drinking, we can talk about each one of these for days on end, but just hitting the highlights. Eating and drinking real food and adequate clean hydration. Conscious mindful eating, taking a pause. Usually Carol and myself, we look to take a moment of pause to say a blessing while we're eating. Movement, fitness. Again, we want to move, walk, dance, gardening. Robert loves to dance there in the morning with his wife. cardio, posture. Again, other things to look at, cardio exercise, aerobic exercise, posture and strength training. Okay, usually recommend to my patients to do light squats, which can be very, very helpful for your hormonal system. Stretching, contralateral movement. Now, as we get older, doing contralateral movement, even young children, before they walk, or infants, they should be encouraged to crawl before they walk. And Sharon can tell us more about that, because it actually helps create brain pathways, neurological pathways for greater physical maturity and movement, contralateral movement. Getting outside, full spectrum light. Now, when you get outside, there's times when really not to wear sunglasses, or sometimes to wear sunglasses if you have some cataracts developing. But full spectrum light, when you look up at the sky, it actually feeds your pineal gland. And if you're feeling tired at times, just look up at the sky, not directly at the sun, but actually there's something can be received into your nervous system through your retina, which has a direct influence on your pineal gland, which in turn influences your pituitary gland, which in turn influences every other gland in our body. So considering that, getting outside with full spectrum light. And then ultimately is this, the flow state. Now, out of all these here, what I've come down to after practicing for 40 years now in chiropractic is how important it is to have a flow state, the balance of rest and activity. Let's look at that more deeply. So our conscious flow state, here we have activity, here we have rest. So our flow state, being in a state of presence and ease, looking to be in that flow state. However, when things come along where we might be taking too much, we start to ramp up. We start to overamp out of that flow state zone. And then we might feel anxious, or we have the feeling, I got to get it done. We're jamming things in. Okay. There might be overcare with someone you might be caring for, of over worry, which can accelerate, you can say, our nervous system, or sympathetic nervous system, which we talked about last week. And then along with that, if we're not doing enough, if we're a sense of boredom, something's missing, we're not taking on enough there, we're not being, say, of service to our world enough. If we get stuck in the past matters more to us. And then we're talking about equanimity in today's world. If we get entangled with personal and worldly matters, it's going to dampen our you can say our energetic patterns. It's going to dampen our ability to stay in this flow state. So what does it take? It takes containment. It takes in work time and free time. And when we're in that flow state, it brings a sense of meaningfulness and ingeniousness. When we're in this flow, actually, it's amazing what dawns in our consciousness. But how we get there is looking again, finding that compass in our heart, and opening up to finding that compass in our heart. We've been doing a little bit of breathing with heart math exercises, but for each of us, I think each of us has a sensing of how to find that compass in our heart. And then when we do that individually, we can do it together. And when we do it together, something greater expands. You can say these borders begin to expand greater, not only for ourselves, but the world in general. And then we're looking to actually do that, to bring a greater, you can say, conveyor belt, a wider conveyor belt of peace, harmony, and joy into the world. Okay, let's continue on here. Finding joy in the flow of life. Now, this picture here is from the Flow Research Collective, and I'm going to go through this diagram. So we look at struggle, release, flow, and recovery. Let's look at struggle first. Now, struggle can relate to being stuck in something called beta waves. Now, we need beta waves, you can say, to get us up and going, but if we get stuck in over worry and jamming things in, repeating ourselves, being looped in consciousness there. We're stuck in those beta waves. And then there's struggle, the struggle with that. So again, what we're doing here, and I'm sure in other areas of your experience there, of your learnings here, we want to recognize too, this is when cortisol, norepinephrine, adrenal hormones start to accelerate. And these are the things that can cause our body to break down faster. If you have higher cortisol levels, you might notice more belly fat around your stomach. Norepinephrine and adrenal hormones. So we want to keep these in balance. But again, we want to see what it takes to have perspective, spaciousness opens. So, as we breathe, as we recognize when we're being overamped, we we stop, we breathe, we do what's necessary to let something pause, to understand. And when that happens, there's a release. Physiologically, that relates to alpha waves, brain waves engaging with alpha waves. You heard of the alpha state. It's more of a, you can say, more of a conscious perspective state. And physiologically, that helps to release nitric oxide in our system. And when nitric oxide is released, it opens up our circulation. It opens up more oxygen distribution through our bodies, where our brains are more invigorated, our bodies are more invigorated. And for folks like Pitar playing soccer, that can accelerate playing soccer better because there's greater circulation. So release, but then that leads the way to flow. And you may have heard that concept, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. There, his work with flow, where we're engaged in total presence, awe, and wonder work activities. So this is where we might have a job, we might have to do our job, but looking to find or know the activities we love to engage with that bring us a sense of awe and wonder and have time for that there, or that allows for that awe and wonder helps open up that sense of joy. And when we're in that state, this is when theta and gamma waves are engaged, as well as dopamine and endorphins. And it's interesting, when theta opens up, it opens up creativity. When gamma opens up, it opens up our heightened focused awareness. And it's interesting to think of theta. Children's been known to have basically more theta waves happening in their experience than adults. And you think about with kids, how they have that sense of awe and wonder, and which allows for them to actually appreciate the world. But for as adults, sometimes we need to remember that, recultivate that. And part of that is looking to see how we can engage in things that we really love to do. And this is where our creativity and geniusness comes in, your works of significance. Today Robert showed me his watercolor paintings, and they're just beautiful. They're works of significance. He loves that. There's a sense of meaningfulness there. Okay. And this is where we increase in skill and capability. The work activity. Some of us might want to learn an instrument. So it takes time with skill and capability there. But then we want to discerning space to so engage. So again, we may not have a lot of space, but discerning the space. Sometimes you might need to wake up earlier to actually open up the space to engage in these work activities that you just so love to engage with. So looking at it further, transition time from work time to free time. Again, I said a lot right here with flow, but there's also parameters of flow. We're saying that sometimes when you engage in those activities, if you spend a little bit too much time, it takes you out of the flow, even though you think you want to get things done with it. There's a whole science behind that. But that's where this work time to free time, a transition from work time to free time. We find happiness by differently engaging. So this is when we're in the recovery stage, where delta waves are engaged. Serotonin and oxytocin are accelerated in our system or experienced in our system. And this is where regenerative structured rest time with awe and wonder. So the same thing, our rest time or our free time or open time, to see how that can be structured in a way where we're engaged with still things that give us awe and wonder. Carol loves to read certain books that gives her a sense of awe and wonder there. I love taking a walk near the river. I'm sure you do too, and you have things in your own open and free time that bring you a sense of awe and wonder. But to have times for that there. And then forms of endearment, our serotonin, oxytocin levels here, forms of endearment, touch, hugs there. So that also allows for recovery here. Yeah. Okay, so just can you take that in for a moment? I know that there's a lot there too. And if you have any questions about it, just log them and we can talk about it later. Okay, let's move on. So finding your joy in flow. Again, our awake state, not getting stuck in our awake state, finding release, finding times to be actually in total presence activities, and then recovery time, finding your joy and flow. Okay, your joy and flow. This is a picture of the Chattahoochee River that I walk by. I try to get there every Friday afternoon there. So this is a poem. I'll tell you who wrote it. Let yourself open to the river of your great purpose. Align with its flow, with its love. Align with its flow, with its love. So again, engaging with things you just love to do, engage with, and let your unique gifts carve a path that will not only fulfill you, but also shape the world around you in ways only you can with others. Okay? Not only for yourself, but with others. Your living, your purpose makes a difference. Assume the task at hand. Okay. So I put that in, added to his poem, and it's his words too, the person, the author. But assuming the task at hand, you can just say whatever needed right now, then and there, to assume the task in hand. And as we do that, with, you can say, permeate it with a sense of peace, harmony, and joy, then things open up step by step. We live in a sequence, in a flowing sequence, assuming the task at hand. Sometimes it's the simplest thing, just to do the thing at hand. And that was written by Chuck Ribley from a book he created called The Seven Principles of Purpose, a manifesto for a meaningful life, with my adaptations there. Chuck Ribley was one of the founding fathers of Life Chiropractic College at Life University, where I went to chiropractic school. And Life has been known to hold, you can say, the innate awareness of what chiropractic is really about. And he was a central figure in allowing Life to continue as a great school. Okay, joy of flow meditation. Yeah, like after presenting a bit there, I speak a bit fast. I think just slow down a little bit. And we'll just do a little bit of meditation to help digest what we just considered. So again, let's upright ourselves, hand over our heart if you like. Breathing in slow and out slower, uprighting your spine, feet flat on the floor. Breathing in slow, out slower through your heart, and giving thanks for what we just heard or whatever struck you, maybe consciously or in feeling, and taking note. What did you take note of? Did you take note of the flow cycle of being in your ingenious zone, theta waves? And what did you take note of? Consider what you took note of. Breathing, just being with that. And breathing slowly as you're with that awareness, whatever struck your heart or mind. And appreciating opening up in a greater way. In a greater way, in a sensing of your own experience, but acting as a door for you can say the effulgence of joy to extend into the world through you, through us, through all of us. So we have a wider conveyor belt of that experience into the world. One more time, breathing that feeling in and breathing it out. Very good. Okay. Okay, we'll come back. We'll come back here and we'll see what's next. Let's consider, again, what insight has been most valuable to you? How will you apply what you've learned today? Is there anyone or anything you have most appreciated? So take a moment, journal a little bit there, what has been most valuable to you.